Hello, I'm standing beside a statue of Lenin, as you see here. Not actually in Russia. Russia is that way about 300 or 400 meters, so right on the border. But of course, on this side certainly was an influence of communism, and this is why there certainly is statues still to be found. But though I have to say it's probably not in its original position, it's now in the corner over here rather than in the pride of place, it reflecting changing opinions and changing attitudes. And the reason I wanted to stand here and present this, which is number 8 in the series, and Gospel is Galatians, from slaves to heirs. And I would want to suggest to you that even though maybe there were some laudable intentions, what it ended up being was too many people being enslaved by the system. And this is what Paul is talking about here when he discusses this whole idea of being a slave to sin. That's where his perspective is there in Galatians 3, Galatians 4. He's talking about the fact that we are enslaved. We are not able to make free choices. And in fact, that is why Jesus came, to liberate us from that slavery, to help us to be able to make a choice. That's the right way to view it, is that while you're a slave, you're not capable of making free choices. So you have to be liberated, and then you are able to make the right kind of choice. There in Galatians 3 and Galatians 4, Paul contrasts those who are still slaves to the law and slaves to other so-called gods. The slavery of what you might call either false religion or misunderstood religion, ways in which we think we are approaching God, but we're really not. In the heathen way, you try and placate the wrath of the gods by sacrifice and by giving all these offerings and so on. And all too often, even under the law, the Jewish law, people tended to see things in what you might say is a similar way. You were trying to buy God off by what you did. And certainly it was a system that ended up being very much like works righteousness. And Paul is saying, no, you're no longer a slave to false gods or a slave to this false system. You have been set free to come to know the true God, come to know him through Jesus Christ. And to know him is eternal life, as John says. So as we think about this whole aspect of being slaves to the law, let's reflect about the way that sometimes we have operated. Have we not also said that this is the way, and followed an authoritarian approach, condemning those who disagree, emphasizing right behavior rather than the changing of the heart? And Paul is trying to say to us here, you are no longer slaves, now you are heirs, joint heirs with Christ. Your situation is totally changed. It's not one of a legal problem between you and God. It's an issue that you are now his true children. You have chosen to be heirs with your brother Jesus Christ. What an amazing idea, what an amazing thought, to go from slaves to heirs. Slaves had no rights. They could not even inherit. They had no ability to operate within society except at the most menial way. But an heir, the heir of the promise, gained the inheritance, was the one who would succeed and inherit the whole family fortune, as it were. So what Paul is trying to tell these people in Galatians is, don't go back to this slavery, the slavery of the law and the slavery to sin, the slavery to false worship, but come to know God, to know him as eternal life, and we can be joint heirs with Jesus Christ, heirs of the kingdom. What an amazing promise that God gives to all of us.